Welcome back to the Christian Century YouTube channel. I'm John, joined today by one of our writers, Tracy Simmons, who has written for us a news story called, and I'm going to just read the official long title, Facebook Group Helps Women Find Healing After Alleged Abuse at Baptist Counseling Facility. That facility being Vision of Hope in Lafayette, Indiana. We are going to talk a little bit, not about necessarily what's in the article, but about the process of writing a story like this. Before we dive into all that, hello, Tracy. Welcome. Good to see you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, John. It's nice to be here. Yeah, my name is Tracy Simmons. I live in Washington State, where I run a publication called Faves News. We are an online publication that covers religion and ethics in Washington and Idaho, a little bit in Oregon sometimes. I'm trying to cover the West. We have 17 reporters writing about religion and 35 columnists. Um, but that's just one of my jobs. I'm also a professor of journalism at Washington State University, where I get to teach a religion journalism class.
Very cool. Well, thank you for joining us and for writing this piece. Investigative journalism, news journalism, this stuff is very outside the wheelhouse of, I think, probably most of our readers. Even I, working in a magazine, don't work on pieces like this. I'm curious how a piece like this begins, how stories get onto your desk, how you make the decisions of which stories to pursue. I wonder if you could share a little bit about that with us.
Yeah, sure. A lot of it's about relationship building. I get press releases in my inbox all the time, but this one actually came from the host of Sons of Patriarchy podcast. I did a story on Sons of Patriarchy. I've done a couple of articles about them. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this podcast. It's about exposing Christian nationalism and religious abuse, basically. And so the women in my story were on that podcast, and the host of the show sent me a text message and said, "This is a really cool story. Do you want to, look into it?" And he gave me their contact info. I got really lucky in that these women wanted to talk. They wanted to tell their story. Um, Also, there had been some lawsuits filed, so I had data, I had stuff to lean on. So I started the story in October, and it ran in February, just to show you how long something like this takes.
Yeah. In this piece, some of the stuff reported on is really heavy. I mean, I have a little bit of background with the biblical counseling
Mhm.
phenomenon, so my anger was constantly rising as I was reading the piece.
Yeah,
Um, I could only imagine writing it, having the
yeah.
interviews, the emotional dynamics that must come into play. And I'm just curious how you
Yeah.
navigate that as a journalist, forming these empathetic bonds with these survivors. Yeah, I'm just curious if you could speak to maybe how you take care of yourself, even stay grounded as you're working on a piece like this.
That's a great question. That's something I teach in my classes is, self-care. I don't think we taught that in journalism school, at least when I was in school for that. But now it's really important. And so I interviewed each woman twice for this story, and each interview was over an hour. And so it was really lengthy. There's just so much information. I felt like part of my job was just to listen, just to ask more questions. I've been doing this a long time. I've been a reporter. I started when I was 15, actually, at my local newspaper in New Mexico. So I've been doing this a long time, and I have just learned how to kind of turn it off. And I know that sounds kind of bad, but it's a way to protect myself. And so I could relate to a lot of what they were saying too. I grew up in a home that was also very conservative. There were definitely spiritual abuse issues in that home. Um, but one thing I've learned is that, I'm going to listen to their stories. I'm going to write down, I'm going to ask the really hard questions. I'm going to tell them I want more details. I know that's probably uncomfortable. And then when I'm done with my interview, I have to learn how to do something to process it all in a healthy way so I can go back and ask more questions and write a story that hopefully will be as objective as possible. And so for me, that's going for bike rides. It's talking to my partner about, what I just heard, playing with my dogs, things like that. That it really, and sometimes when I'm writing a story like this, I have to just walk away for a little bit and then come back to it, because it can just be really overwhelming and feel like a big burden. But I was happy to be able to tell their story, and I feel honored that they were able to share it with me.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing all that. The final thing I wanted to ask you, and it's not necessarily about this particular article, but just because you are running a journalism website, you're teaching journalism at a university. w- I work with some journalists, and it just seems like there's a lot changing in the landscape
Yeah.
right now with the erosion of trust in institutions, including the media out there and the
Mhm.
public. Also, I think like shifting ideas about objectivity and what role that should or shouldn't play in reporting.
Yeah.
I'm curious if, as you think about the changes that are happening right now, if there are one or two shifts that feel like particularly salient to you.
It's a great big question. First, just a note on objectivity, because I mentioned that in my previous answer. I don't think it's possible to be objective, and I think for a long time that was the goal, right? Be objective. I think the goal is to appear objective by using certain phrases in your story, or eliminating certain phrases, or by trying to get all sides if appropriate. Sometimes you don't need all sides of a story, but I think it's important for us to check our biases and say, oh my gosh, I've only spoken to women in the story. I need to reach out to a man or whatever, and just try to figure out those imbalances. Um, what with that said, I think there are two major changes happening. The first one is one everyone's still trying to figure out, which is of course AI. Um, I'm doing an AI. I've done AI training for my reporters right now. I use AI quite a bit for writing headlines, for writing subheads. Um, but there's a paper in Cleveland that just announced that they have the reporters put everything into a chatbot, pump out the stories, and then the reporters just edit. So I think that's a really gray area right now, and a lot of people have mixed feelings about that. And I guarantee if you get 12 journalists around a table or even 12 academics, nobody's going to agree on AI. So I think it's a tool as newsrooms are becoming short-staffed increasingly. It's a good way to just say, "Hey, I'm going to outsource this one task to a machine," really. But we have to figure out those ethical boundaries there. And the exciting thing that I think is happening is I think that we're seeing an increase in religion reporting, and that makes me so happy because I've dedicated my whole life to writing about religion. We're seeing, the AP has a religion team now, global religion team. NPR has a religion team. And they even have, uh, even locally here where I live, we have people on that national religion team. The conversation, is being funded and covering more religion. So I think the beat, it took a big hit in 2009. I think it's slowly coming back up, and publishers are realizing this is something important and we shouldn't turn a blind eye to it.
Mm. Well, thank you for sharing some of your wisdom with us here today. Anyone out there who missed this article, please check it out. The link is in the video description below, along with the link to the Faves News website, where you can check out all of Tracy's great work up in the Northwest. Thank you so much for chatting today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John.